I kissed Dr. Seraphine Rhee before I learned where the restroom was, before I found financial aid, before I even put my student card on a lanyard like everyone else. It happened because my ex-girlfriend chose the marble lobby of Alder Hall to introduce me to the woman she had been sleeping with, and the woman was my best friend. Clara stood there in her white coat and red lipstick, one hand on Nina's waist. I had imagined 100 versions of seeing Clara again after the summer she disappeared with a message that said, "I need space, M." I had imagined dignity. I had not imagined Nina wearing my scarf, the pale blue one with the tiny ink stain from the night I helped her finish her portfolio. I had not imagined Clara smiling at me with that soft, public sadness she used when she wanted to seem kind while cutting someone open. "Emery," she said, as if my name were something she had once owned. "I didn't know you were starting today." Of course she knew. Nina knew too. The lobby smelled of rainwater, espresso, and new paint. Students moved around us with the elegant nervousness of people desperate to become impressive. I could feel every face turning in little bright cuts. Clara's friends, who had become Nina's friends and somehow never mine, watched with the appetite people have when humiliation belongs to someone else. Nina looked at the floor. That hurt more than Clara's hand on her waist. Clara had always been theatrical. Nina had been my quiet place. She had slept on my couch after panic attacks, eaten cereal from my biggest mug, braided my hair before my first fellowship interview because my hands shook too badly. Nina had listened to me cry over Clara and said, "You deserve someone who chooses you in daylight." Then she had taken my daylight for herself. "I thought you transferred," Nina murmured. "You thought," I said, and my voice sounded almost calm, which was a miracle or a failure. "That must be new for you." A few people made small shocked sounds. Clara's smile thinned. She had liked me best when I was sweet enough to be corrected. "There's no need to be cruel." I looked at her hand on Nina's waist. "You're right. You've covered that department beautifully." Nina flinched. I wanted the flinch to satisfy me. It didn't. It made me feel uglier because grief is rarely elegant when it finally stands up for itself. Clara leaned closer, lowering her voice just enough that the room still understood there was something intimate being said. "Em, don't do this on the first day. People will think you're unstable." There it was, the little hook. Clara's most reliable trick was to hurt me, and then describe my reaction as the wound. I had spent 2 years apologizing for bleeding on her shoes. My throat tightened. The lobby blurred at the edges, not with tears yet, but with the effort of refusing them. I did not want to cry in front of them. I did not want Nina to see my face collapse and decide privately that Clara had been right to leave me. I did not want strangers to carry my heartbreak into group chats before I had found my seminar room. So I walked away. I walked too fast, straight through the lobby, past a table of orientation folders, down a corridor lined with portraits of dead donors. My boot slipped on rainwater near the side entrance. I turned blindly toward a stairwell at the same moment someone stepped out with a stack of books held against her chest. I collided with black wool, white paper, and a scent like cold tea and cedar. The books hit the floor. My body pitched forward. A hand caught my elbow. I grabbed at the first solid thing in reach, which was the lapel of a tailored coat. My mouth met hers for half a second. It was not a romantic kiss. It was panic, gravity, and bad architecture. Still, her lips were cool and soft, the contact absurdly precise in the chaos of falling books, and my mind went blank with the scandalous completeness of a power outage. When I pulled back, I saw a woman with sharp cheekbones, dark hair cut just below her jaw, and eyes the gray of winter glass. She did not look surprised exactly. She looked as if surprise were a subordinate emotion she had dismissed years ago for incompetence. "Are you injured?" she asked. My hand was still gripping her coat. I released it as if it burned. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. There was water and people, and my shoes apparently have a death wish." Her gaze moved over my face, taking in the trembling mouth, the wet lashes, the scarf twisted in my fist because I had snatched it from Nina's neck without realizing. Then her eyes dropped to the floor. My notebook had fallen open beside her books. Not my class notebook. The other one. The black notebook with no label. The one that held drafts signed under a name no one at this university was supposed to connect to me. Moth. The anonymous essays that had spent the summer making the Hawthorne Fellowship Board bleed politely in public. She bent, picked it up before I could move, and read one visible line. Recognition entered her face with terrible stillness. She bent, picked up the notebook before I could move, and read one visible line. I saw recognition enter her face with terrible stillness. Emery Voss, she said. I swallowed. Yes. I am Dr. Seraphine Rhee. The name struck harder than the collision. Everyone knew Dr. Rhee before arriving at Alder. Youngest tenured professor in the department. Critic with a reputation for ruining careers in 12 elegant sentences. Director of the first-year seminar I had fought to enter. And, according to every whispered orientation forum, a woman made entirely of ice and impossible standards. She had also written a public rebuttal to Moth's most famous essay, dissecting my evidence with such chilling fairness that half the internet called her cruel and the other half called her brilliant. She held my notebook, and I understood my first day had not merely collapsed. It had become a case study. I can explain, I said, which was what guilty people said when they could not explain anything. Her eyes stayed on mine. Can you? No. Something almost like amusement moved through her expression and disappeared. She closed the notebook without looking at another page and handed it back. Then do not try in a hallway. I'm not, that is, you can't tell anyone. I can do many things, Ms. Voss. At the moment, I am choosing to be late. She gathered her books with efficient movements. I knelt to help, still shaking. Our hands touched over a copy of Sappho in translation. She withdrew first. My seminar begins in 7 minutes. If you are enrolled, wash your face and arrive in 5. If you are not enrolled, wash your face anyway. I stared at her. Her gaze flicked once toward the lobby. Clara's laugh drifted faintly through the corridor, polished and poisonous. Dr. Rhee heard it. I knew she did because the air around her seemed to tighten. Do not give them the version of you they rehearsed, she said. Then she walked away, leaving me with my stolen scarf, my secret, and the memory of a mouth I had accidentally kissed before knowing whether the woman who owned it intended to destroy me. I did wash my face. The restroom mirror showed a 26-year-old woman with damp brown hair escaping its clip, cheap mascara smudged under one eye, and a face that had spent too many years trying to be agreeable. I had won a scholarship to one of the most selective literature graduate programs in the country, survived 3 jobs, 1 disastrous love, and a childhood in which my mother taught me to keep emergency cash in 3 places. Yet I looked like a girl with a paper bag lunch who had discovered everyone else had been invited to the banquet. I pressed cold water under my eyes until my skin stung. Then I opened the black notebook and read the line Dr. Rhee had seen. Institutions adore resilience because it lets them admire the bruised without asking who swung first. I should have burned the notebook. Instead, I put it in my bag and went to class. Dr. Rhee's seminar room was on the 3rd floor, all tall windows and dark tables arranged in a square. Every chair was taken except one beside the door and one across from Clara. Because the universe was not content with subtlety, Nina sat beside Clara, my scarf now folded in her lap like a stolen flag. I chose the chair by the door. Dr. Rhee stood at the head of the table, writing her name on the board in neat black strokes. She had removed her coat. Her blouse was ivory silk, severe at the collar, sleeves buttoned at her wrists. There was nothing soft about her except the mouth I had crashed into, and that knowledge made my face heat with humiliating precision. She did not look at me when I entered. "You are late," she said. 3 minutes, I replied before survival could remind me to be careful. The room went quiet. Clara's lips curved. Dr. Rhee turned from the board. Her expression could have preserved meat. "Is that an argument?" "No," I said. An autopsy. For one dangerous second, silence held. Then someone coughed to hide a laugh. Dr. Rhee studied me. "Sit down, Ms. Voss." I sat. The seminar began with no introductions, no cheerful icebreakers, no invitations to share favorite books as if literature were a pet. Dr. Rhee gave us a syllabus thick enough to stop a small knife and said, "If you are here to be told you are talented, leave now and call your parents. If you are here to learn whether your talent has stamina, stay." She spoke about criticism as an ethical practice, and reading as attention rather than consumption. When she asked a question, she let silence become uncomfortable enough that someone filled it honestly. I hated how much I respected her before the hour ended. I hated how much I respected her before the hour ended. Then she assigned close readings and asked each of us to summarize our current research interests in 2 sentences. Clara, of course, spoke beautifully about female friendship as a site of aesthetic betrayal, which made my pen carve a small crescent into the margin. Nina said she wanted to study the ethics of witness, and I nearly laughed aloud. When it was my turn, my throat tightened. "I write about institutional narratives," I said. "Who gets to be called damaged, who gets to be called difficult, and who profits from the difference." Dr. Rhee looked at me for the first time since I sat down. "That is 1 sentence. I'm saving the second for when I know whether the room deserves it." A few heads turned. Clara's face went smooth and careful. Dr. Rhee's gaze did not soften, but something in it sharpened toward me rather than against me. "Risky economy," she said. "We will see whether you can afford it." After class, she dismissed everyone except me. The students filed out with the predatory slowness of people pretending not to listen. Clara touched Nina's arm at the door. "We'll wait outside," she said too sweetly. "No," Dr. Rhee said without looking at her. "You will not." Clara blinked. It may have been the first time that day someone had denied her a stage. "I only meant—" "I understood you." Dr. Rhee stacked her papers. "That was not the issue." Clara left with a smile that promised future damage. Nina followed, turning once as if she might say something. She did not. The door closed. I remained seated because my legs had developed a private rebellion. Dr. Rhee leaned against the desk, arms folded. "Moth." I stared at the table. "That is not a question." "No, it is a problem. Are you going to report me?" "To whom? The Department of Anonymous Essayists? The Fellowship Board? The Dean? Whoever professors call when students are inconvenient." "I do not call people because students are inconvenient. If I did, my phone would never survive orientation." I looked up despite myself. Her face remained composed, but there was a dryness in her tone that suggested humor buried under permafrost. "You argued against one of my essays." "I argued against your evidence, not your existence. They may not separate the two." "I am not they." She moved to the window. Rain striped the glass behind her, turning the campus into a watercolor of stone and umbrellas. "Why use a pseudonym? Why ask when you already know?" "Because assumptions are vulgar." That startled a breath from me. I gripped the strap of my bag. "Because my mother cleans offices in a building named after a man whose foundation funds this university. Because I was waitlisted until my essay went viral, and then suddenly everyone wanted to be seen considering me. Because if they had known I wrote it before offering the scholarship, they would have called me brave in public and rejected me in private. Because I needed the money, and I still wanted to tell the truth." Dr. Rhee turned back. "That was 4 reasons. I had a 5th, but I'm saving it for a room that deserves it." She looked at me for a long moment. I expected reprimand, warning, a cold lecture about professionalism. Instead, she said, "You will keep your work for this seminar separate from your anonymous publications. You will cite properly. You will not use my classroom as a battlefield for private revenge, however tempting certain targets may be. In return, I will not reveal your pseudonym." My chest loosened so suddenly I nearly swayed. "Why?" Because secrets are not inherently dishonest. Sometimes they are weatherproofing. I did not know what to do with that sentence. It was too careful to be comfort and too kind to be neutral. She picked up a pen. One more thing. I braced. If you collide with me again, try to aim for my shoulder. Heat climbed my neck. I said I was sorry. You did, very quickly, into my mouth. I made a sound that should have been illegal in an academic setting. Dr. Rhee's expression remained perfectly still, which made it worse. This can never be mentioned again. Agreed. Ever. I am capable of discretion. You just proved otherwise. A small change touched her mouth. Not a smile exactly, more like the idea of one restrained for its own safety. Then I will practice. That should have been the end of it. I had a scholarship to protect, an ex to ignore, a best friend to mourn, and a secret identity apparently sitting in the palm of the department's most frightening professor. I should have built walls out of coursework and stayed away from her office unless summoned by grades or fire. Instead, the first week turned into the second, and Dr. Seraphine Rhee became a weather system I could not stop tracking. She was colder than rumor promised and stranger than rumor allowed. She returned essays with comments that could slice the nerve from a sentence. But she remembered which students stuttered when interrupted and never interrupted her. She terrified arrogant men with questions so calm, they mistook them for mercy until too late. She wore mostly black, gray, and ivory, as if color were a negotiation she had declined. She never raised her voice. People leaned toward her anyway. When she entered a room, the air developed posture. Clara tried to make me small in all the predictable ways. She sat across from me in seminar and quoted authors I had introduced her to as if I had not been present when she learned their names. She mentioned parties I was not invited to. She praised Nina's insights with that intimate public warmth designed to inform me I had been replaced efficiently. Nina avoided my eyes until the avoidance became an insult of its own. Once in the cafeteria, I heard her tell someone, "Emery has always been intense. She feels things so dramatically." The student murmured sympathy. I stood behind them holding a tray with soup I suddenly could not swallow. Dr. Rhee appeared at the coffee counter. "Ms. Voss." Nina went pale. The student with her looked from me to Dr. Rhee as if a door had opened onto weather. "Professor," I said. Dr. Rhee glanced at my untouched tray. "You have office hours in 10 minutes. "I don't." "You do now." Her eyes moved to Nina, then back to me. "Bring the soup." I followed because refusal would have required a dignity I had temporarily misplaced. Her office was at the end of a corridor lined with faculty photographs. It was smaller than I expected, crowded with books, one narrow window, a Persian rug faded at the center, and a kettle on a side table. There were no personal photographs, no flowers, no evidence that anyone had ever been invited to imagine her life outside thought. She pointed to the chair. "Eat." "I'm not hungry." That is not the same as not needing food. You can't order students to eat. I can strongly recommend soup with academic severity. Despite myself, I laughed. It came out broken. I sat and picked up the spoon. The soup had gone lukewarm. It still steadied me. Dr. Rhee read something at her desk while I ate, giving me privacy without leaving me alone. That was the first small mercy she offered me, and it annoyed me because I could not dismiss it as performance. No one was watching. She did not ask what Nina had said. She did not tell me to be strong. She simply let the room hold me without making me explain why I needed holding. When I finished, she slid a book across the desk. "For your project." I looked at the title. "This is out of print." "Yes." "How do you have it?" I am old enough to have bought books before the internet became a personality. "You're not old." The words escaped before I could stop them. Her gaze lifted. The air changed, not dramatically, but enough that I became aware of my pulse and the quiet electric hum of the lamp. Dr. Rhee was 38, maybe, with the kind of beauty that did not ask for approval and therefore received more of it than anyone knew what to do with. I looked away first. "Borrow it," she said. Do not flatter it. Do not highlight in it. Do not leave it near soup. Yes, Professor. The title should have restored distance. Instead, it made her blink slowly, as if something in my voice had touched an exposed wire. I carried the book back to my dorm like contraband. I lived in a graduate residence that smelled of detergent, old heat, and other people's ambition. My room was narrow, my desk faced a brick wall, and my neighbor played cello badly at midnight with touching dedication. I worked evenings in the university archive, scanning donor correspondence under fluorescent lights, which felt either ironic or suicidal depending on sleep. I kept writing as Moth, though my essays changed after Dr. Rhee learned the secret. I became more careful, which irritated me until I understood that careful did not mean less true. In seminar, she never mentioned the pseudonym, but she asked questions that found the weak beams in my arguments. The accidental kiss became a ghost between us. I made rules. No unnecessary office hours, no imagining the hallway, no gratitude pretending to be longing. I broke each rule and redrew it behind myself. The first time she truly protected me was not dramatic enough for gossip, which made it matter more. The department held a reception for first-year students in a hall with chandeliers, wine no student could afford, and trustees drifting among us like expensive weather. I wore a black dress from a thrift store, hemmed by hand and convincing from a distance. Clara wore emerald silk. Nina wore the blue scarf again. I had not asked for it back, because asking would admit how much I wanted it. Near the buffet, an older donor with a face like damp paper asked what I studied. I answered. He laughed lightly and said, "Ah, grievance literature, very fashionable among young women now." Clara, standing close enough to hear, smiled into her glass. Nina looked away. I opened my mouth. Before anger found grammar, Dr. Rhee appeared beside me. "Mr. Calder," she said, "how nice to see you outside a funding meeting." The man brightened and then dimmed when he recognized her tone. "Dr. Rhee, I was just teasing your student." "No," she said. "You were testing whether condescension would be cheaper than curiosity." The air around us froze. Clara's smile vanished. Mr. Calder flushed. "I didn't mean offense." "I know. That is what makes it habitual rather than strategic." My hand tightened around my glass. I wanted to disappear and to applaud at the same time. Dr. Rhee turned to me. "Ms. Voss, your answer was accurate but incomplete. Tell him about the archive case." It was not rescue as removal. It was rescue as return. She had opened a path and expected me to walk it myself. I did. I told Mr. Calder about donor letters from the 1960s, about women admitted through charity committees, about gratitude used as administrative discipline. I spoke for 3 minutes. By the end, 2 other students had drifted closer, and Mr. Calder looked like a man regretting his choice of buffet. Dr. Rhee said nothing. She only stood beside me, not touching, her presence a dark, steady line at the edge of my vision. Afterward, Clara found me near the balcony doors. That was quite a performance. I turned. Nina stood behind her, arms crossed. "Which part bothered you? The words or the fact that they were mine?" Clara smiled. "You always did confuse being angry with being interesting. And you always confused being desired with being right." Her eyes hardened. Nina whispered, "Emery, don't." I looked at her then. Really looked. The scarf was soft against her throat, my scarf, and she wore guilt like perfume she hoped no one would identify. "Give it back." Nina's hand rose to the fabric. Clara laughed under her breath. "It's a scarf." It was mine. Nina untied it slowly. For a second, I thought she might apologize. She placed it in my hand without meeting my eyes. "I didn't think you'd care." That almost undid me. Not because it was cruel, but because she believed it. She had stolen a small thing after helping break a large one, and convinced herself the size absolved her. I wrapped the scarf around my wrist. "That was always the problem, wasn't it? Dr. Rhee was watching from across the room. Our eyes met through the crowd. I expected her to look away. She didn't. She lifted her glass a fraction, not a toast anyone else would notice, and I felt something fierce and reckless rise under my ribs. Not because she had saved me, because she had seen me save myself and recognized it. That night, I walked back through rain instead of taking the shuttle. Halfway across the quad, Dr. Rhee's black umbrella appeared above my head. "You will ruin the dress," she said. "I bought it for $12. Then it has exceeded expectations. Protect it. I like rain. You are shivering. Maybe I like shivering. Then I will revise my understanding of your intelligence downward." I glanced at her. Beneath the umbrella, the world narrowed to rain ticking against fabric and the faint scent of her perfume, something dry and herbal. "Do you always insult people as a form of care?" "No. Just me. Mostly students whose soup intake concerns me." I laughed, and the sound drifted into the rain. She walked me to the residence gate, stopping beneath the security light. The umbrella cast a shadow over her eyes. "Professor," I said. "Yes." "Thank you for today. You did the speaking. You made room for it." She looked past me toward the residence windows. "Rooms should be remade by the people forced to stand in them." I should have gone inside. Instead, I said, "That sounds almost like something Moth would write." Her gaze returned to mine, sharp. "Moth would use a stronger verb." "Demolished?" "Possibly, if she were feeling theatrical. She usually is." A real smile nearly happened. It transformed her face for half a second, and the sight was so intimate, I felt I had walked in on her changing clothes. She looked away first. "Good night, Ms. Voss." "Good night, Dr. Rhee." In my room, I pressed the blue scarf to my face. It smelled faintly of Nina's perfume and rain. I washed it in the sink until my hands went red from cold water, then hung it over the radiator. By morning, it smelled only of soap and steam. Some griefs, I learned, could be laundered. Others needed fire. October sharpened everything. Classes grew harder, daylight shorter, and Clara less subtle. She had expected me to collapse into the role she wrote for me. Abandoned, unstable, pitied. Instead, I was inconveniently functional. Worse, I was gaining attention for my work. Dr. Rhee praised no one easily, but she had begun using my arguments as traps for other students. "Ms. Voss has left an assumption here," she would say, and my stomach would drop. But it is a useful assumption. Who can identify why? It was the closest she came to applause. I treasured it, which was foolish. I knew it was foolish while treasuring it. Nina tried to speak to me twice. The first time outside the library, she said, "I miss us." I kept walking. The second time, after seminar, she stepped in front of me near the stairs. "You think I planned this. I think you benefited from not stopping it." Her face crumpled with anger before sadness. "You don't know what it was like being your friend." That stopped me. Nina hugged her books to her chest. "Everything was always about your pain, your mother, your jobs, your big righteous opinions. Clara saw me. She made me feel chosen. The cruelty of it was not that she blamed me for needing her. It was that part of me immediately began searching my memory for evidence she was right. That is what betrayal by a best friend does. It turns your own past into hostile witness." "I'm sorry you felt invisible," I said carefully. "I'm not sorry Clara choosing you made you cruel. She loves me." "Maybe." I looked at her, at the face I had known well enough to draw from memory. "But be careful. Clara loves mirrors. She gets tired when they start reflecting anything she didn't pose." Nina's mouth tightened. "You sound bitter." "I am. I'm also correct. It's a flexible combination." I left shaking. In the stairwell, I found Dr. Rhee waiting near the landing with a book in one hand. She had clearly heard enough. My face burned. Do professors lurk often? I asked. Only when avoiding committee work. I'm fine. I did not ask. Because you know I'd lie? Because I know you are not ready to be asked kindly. That was so accurate it made me angry. You don't know me. No, she said. I pay attention to you. There is a difference. The stairwell hummed around us. Somewhere below, students laughed. I hated the sudden softness in my throat. Why? For the first time, she looked uncertain. It lasted less than a second, but I saw it. Because you are in my seminar. That's not an answer. It is the only appropriate one. Appropriate. The word landed between us like a locked door. Of course she was right. She was my professor. I was her student. She knew my secret. She held institutional power over me even if she never used it. Every charged silence had a structure around it, and that structure had teeth. Shame moved through me, sharp and clean. Right, I said, appropriate. Her expression changed. Emery. The sound of my first name in her voice hurt more than it should have. Don't. She stepped back immediately. I apologize. I went around her and down the stairs, proud of myself for not running. For the next 2 weeks, I was professionally flawless. I attended seminar, submitted brilliant work fueled by humiliation, and avoided office hours like a building fire. Dr. Rhee became equally correct. She called me Ms. Voss, returned comments through the online portal, and never looked at me longer than she looked at anyone else. The accidental kiss receded into unreality. The umbrella became weather. The soup became nutrition. I told myself this was better. I told myself many mature things with the desperation of a person lying into a mirror. Then I got sick. Then I got sick in the least poetic way possible. Fever, rain, cheap meals, and the stubborn pride of a woman who thought collapse was a scheduling problem. I fainted in the archive and woke in the health center under a blanket too thin to respect. By 9, Dr. Rhee arrived, hair damp, coat buttoned crooked for the first and only time I ever saw. You shouldn't be here, I said. That is a familiar and unpersuasive sentence. The nurse ordered fluids, rest, and no work for 48 hours. Dr. Rhee read the instruction sheet as if it were a treaty. She will comply. She will, I croaked. She will unless she prefers hospitalization to humility. She drove me back through rain in a car warmer than any room I had been in all week. Fever made me careless. You said appropriate was the only answer. That hurt. Her hands tightened on the wheel. I know. Say you feel nothing then. She looked at me for a long moment. I will not lie to make this easier. That sentence stayed with me through the fever night. She walked me to my room, waited outside while I changed, then left a bag by the door, tea, medicine, oranges, and the book I needed for my paper. She did not come in. She did not touch me. She protected the boundary with the same severity she used for arguments. It should have made me feel rejected. It made me feel safe, and that was the terrible part. By November, Moth had become a problem larger than my notebook. My latest essay circulated beyond campus after a student journalist linked it to a budget protest. The essay did not name the university, but everyone recognized the donor language. Trustees complained. The dean issued a statement about constructive discourse. Clara began hinting in seminar that anonymous criticism lacked courage. Nina watched me too carefully. I felt the walls moving closer. Dr. Rhee asked me to stay after class the day a printed copy of Moth's essay appeared taped to the department bulletin board with the words "coward" in red marker across the top. I stood before the board after everyone left, staring at the accusation. My hands were cold. It's dramatic, I said. I'll give them that. Dr. Rhee removed the paper slowly. Do you know who did this? No. Do you suspect? Yes. She folded the paper once, twice. Clara. Or someone who wants me to think Clara. Do not protect her from suspicion she has cultivated. I looked at her. That sounded personal. Her face closed. There it was again. A door not locked, only held shut. I should have left it. Instead, I asked, "Did you know her before this year?" Clara's family funds a research prize. I met her at events. Dr. Rhee placed the folded paper on a desk. She learned early that charm is more useful when people mistake it for kindness. You dislike her. I distrust her. Because of me. Her gaze held mine. Because of evidence. A ridiculous warmth moved through me. Professor. Do not look pleased. Being correct about manipulative people is not a hobby I enjoy. Still, she sighed very quietly. Still. We stood in the empty classroom, surrounded by chairs and rain-dark windows. I wanted to tell her everything. How I missed Nina in flashes that made no moral sense. How Clara still appeared in my dreams offering apologies shaped like traps. How being seen by Dr. Rhee felt both healing and dangerous. How I had begun to measure days by whether her comments in the margin were inked in blue or black. Instead, I touched the edge of the desk and said, "If they find out I'm Moth, I could lose the fellowship. You could. I could lose my housing. Yes, you're very comforting. I am trying not to insult you with false reassurance." She paused. "But I will say this. If the university punishes you for writing true things under a pseudonym, I will make the process extremely public and extremely unpleasant. You'd do that for a student?" "Yes. Any student." Her answer took 1 second too long. "Any student in principle." "In principle," I repeated. Her eyes warned me not to step closer to the line. My heart, unhelpful organ, stepped anyway. "And out of principle?" "Emery." This time my name sounded like pain. The door opened. Clara stood there in a cream coat, looking from Dr. Rhee to me with instant comprehension sharpened by malice. "Sorry," she said. "I didn't realize this was a private meeting." Dr. Rhee's face returned to marble. "You did not knock." "I didn't think I needed permission to enter a classroom." "You were mistaken." Clara smiled, but her eyes stayed on me. "Em, can we talk?" "No. You don't have to be so hostile." She said no. Dr. Rhee said. Clara's gaze moved to her. "You're very protective, Professor." "The word you are looking for is attentive." "I'm sure." Clara tilted her head. "People are starting to notice." The room went cold. I knew what she meant. She did not know the truth, not all of it. But Clara could make smoke look like proof and sell it as fire. My hands curled. Dr. Rhee did not react. "People notice many things," she said. "Most people lack discipline in interpretation." Clara's smile widened. "Good thing you're here to teach us." "Indeed, your next essay would benefit from the effort." Clara flushed. It was small but beautiful. She left without another word. I exhaled. "She'll use that." "Yes. I'm sorry." Dr. Rhee turned to me. "For what?" "For being a complication." Her expression shifted, and for a moment the professor vanished. The woman beneath looked tired, angry, and almost unbearably tender. "Do not apologize for being harmed near people who should have behaved better." It was the kind of sentence that could rebuild a person if repeated in enough rooms. I looked away before she saw how much I needed it. Final season arrived with sleet, sleeplessness, and the annual department gala. The gala was a public performance of intellect and money, hosted in the glass atrium of the Hawthorne Arts Center. Students displayed projects. Faculty smiled at donors. Trustees pretended wine and tax advantages were forms of culture. This year, the theme was Truth and Witness, which made everyone nervous because Moth's essay had turned that phrase into a loaded weapon. I almost did not go. Then Clara cornered me outside the library 3 days before the event. "You should be careful at the gala," she said. "People are asking questions." "About catering? I hope there are dumplings." "About Moth." My stomach tightened. I kept my face bored. "Is that still happening?" Clara studied me. "You were never good at pretending with me." I was excellent. That's why the relationship lasted 2 years. Her eyes flickered. You think you're winning because Professor Rhee likes your little speeches, but people like her don't protect people like you for free. The words hit their mark because they wore the shape of my fear. And people like you assume everything is transactional because otherwise your life becomes embarrassing. Clara stepped closer. I know you, Em. I know what you look like when you're desperate to be chosen. It's sad, honestly. First me, then Nina, now your professor. For 1 second, I saw myself through the cruel lens she offered. Grasping, needy, ridiculous. Then I remembered Dr. Rhee's office, the soup, the umbrella, the car in the rain, the door she had refused to cross. Careful was not the same as indifferent. Boundaries were not proof of contempt. I smiled faintly. You don't know what being chosen looks like, I said. You only know what being useful feels like. Clara slapped me. It was quick, not hard enough to injure, but loud enough that 3 students turned. My cheek stung. Clara's face changed immediately into regret-shaped for witnesses. Emery, I'm so sorry. You provoked me. There it was again. The wound described as the weapon. Before I could answer, a voice cut through the corridor. Ms. Arden! Dr. Rhee stood near the stairwell, holding a stack of exams. Her face was so calm I feared for the architecture. Clara went pale. Professor, she said, it was an accident. No. Dr. Rhee walked toward us. An accident is when gravity overperforms. That was assault. It was personal. Then you have misunderstood both privacy and violence. She turned to me, her eyes moving over my cheek. Something dark passed through them. Ms. Voss, would you like to file a report? Clara whispered. M. I touched my cheek. Everyone was watching. Old Emery might have softened the room for Clara, minimized the harm, rescued the person who hurt her because being fair had once meant being endlessly available for erasure. But old Emery was tired. Yes, I said. My voice shook. It still counted. I would. The report did not ruin Clara. People like Clara are rarely ruined by one truth, but it complicated her narrative, and complication is a kind of justice. Nina came to my dorm that night, eyes red, coat unbuttoned against the cold. I almost did not let her in. Then I remembered all the nights she had let herself into my apartment when she could not breathe. And grief, inconveniently, still had manners. She told me you twisted it, Nina said from the doorway. Did you believe her? Nina looked down. That was answer enough. I laughed once, quietly. Then why are you here? Because I saw the mark on your face. We stood in the stale hallway light. My cheek had faded from red to a faint shadow. Nina looked smaller than I remembered, not innocent, but young in the particular way guilt can make a person when no one helps them avoid it. I was jealous of you, she said. I know. Her eyes filled. No, you don't. You think I wanted Clara because she was Clara. I wanted her because she wanted what you had first. Your confidence, your fire, the way people listened when you spoke, even if they hated what you said. I spent years beside you feeling like the friend people forgot to introduce. Then Clara looked at me like taking her from you made me powerful. I leaned against the doorframe. The confession hurt, but not like betrayal. It hurt like finally reading the footnotes to a disaster. Did it? For a while. She wiped her face angrily. Now it feels like living in a house where every mirror belongs to her. Part of me wanted to hold her. Another part remembered the scarf, the silence, the cafeteria. Both parts were mine, and neither could be ignored. I loved you, I said. Nina nodded, crying harder. I know. I don't know how to be your friend anymore. I know that too. Then what do you want? She looked at me. I wanted to say I'm sorry before the gala. Clara is going to do something. She asked me about your notebook, the black one. My blood went cold. I didn't tell her, Nina said quickly. I swear. But she knows it matters. She thinks you're hiding something that can hurt Professor Rhee. Of course. Clara had understood that the fastest way to wound me was no longer through herself. It was through the person she thought I wanted. After Nina left, I emailed Dr. Rhee. I wrote only, "We need to talk before the gala." She replied in 3 minutes. My office. 8 a.m. Do not bring coffee. Bring the black notebook. I did not sleep. At 8, campus was silver with frost. Dr. Rhee's office smelled of tea and paper. She had 2 cups ready, because apparently, do not bring coffee did not mean go uncaffeinated and die. I handed her the notebook. She did not open it. Clara suspects, I said. Yes. You don't seem surprised. She has been circling the idea for weeks. Her methods are not subtle. She might expose me at the gala. She might. Again, stunning comfort. Dr. Rhee rested her hands on the notebook. What do you want to do? The question stopped me. Not what have you done? Not what will I do? Not here is the plan. What do you want? I sat opposite her and realized I did not know because I had spent months reacting to Clara, to Nina, to the fellowship board, to my own longing. Wanting required a quieter room. I don't want to hide forever, I said slowly, but I don't want her to own the reveal. Then take it from her. My pulse jumped. You mean admit it? I mean decide whether the secret still protects you or only frightens you. I looked at the black notebook between us. Its corners were soft from use. It had carried my anger, my facts, my care. It had also carried my fear. If I say it publicly, the board could retaliate. Yes, you'd be dragged into it. Possibly. Because you knew. Yes. And you still think I should? I think you should choose. Not Clara. Not fear. You. Her voice lowered. I will not tell you courage has no cost. That is a lie told by people who send others to pay it. But if you choose to speak, I will stand where I can be seen. The image broke something in me. Dr. Rhee, who had spent a career being untouchable, choosing visibility beside my mess. Why? I whispered. Her gaze held mine, and I saw the answer she would not speak while I was still her student. It moved through the silence with more force than confession. Because it is right, she said, appropriate, careful, true and not whole. I nodded. Okay. The gala glittered in a way that made poverty feel underdressed. The atrium rose 4 stories, glass walls reflecting chandeliers and city lights, trustees in black suits, faculty in restrained elegance, students arranged around project displays like offerings. I wore the same black thrifted dress, this time with the blue scarf tied around my wrist. My cheek mark was gone. My fear was not. Dr. Rhee wore a deep charcoal suit and silver earrings. She looked severe enough to frighten weather. When I entered, she glanced once at my wrist, then at my face. That was all. It steadied me more than an embrace would have. Clara waited until the dean began praising student voices. Of course she did. Timing was one of her few genuine talents. She stepped forward during the open remarks portion, smiling modestly, Nina pale at her side. I think, Clara said, voice carrying, if tonight is about truth and witness, we should discuss the ethics of anonymous attacks within our own community. The room shifted. Conversations thinned. My stomach dropped, then steadied. There are moments when fear becomes so complete it turns into a floor. Clara continued. Some of us have been harmed by writings that present themselves as justice while hiding behind a mask. I believe students deserve transparency, especially when faculty may be protecting certain voices. Her eyes found me. Then Dr. Rhee. There it was, not a knife, but an invitation for the room to imagine one. The dean looked alarmed. A trustee frowned. Dr. Rhee did not move. I stepped forward. My shoes sounded too loud on the polished floor. Clara's smile faltered. She had expected denial, panic, Perhaps Dr. Rhee intervening so the story could become exactly what she wanted. Powerful Professor Shield's unstable favorite. Instead, she got me. "My name is Emery Voss," I said. My voice shook once, then found itself. "I write as Moth." The silence afterward was enormous. Somewhere, a glass clinked. Nina covered her mouth. Clara's face went still with the shocked anger of someone whose weapon had been taken mid-swing. "I used a pseudonym because I was afraid of losing my scholarship, housing, and place here before anyone decided whether the work was true. That fear was not imaginary. If the university wants to discipline me for writing under a pseudonym, I'll participate publicly. If anyone wants to challenge my evidence, I welcome it. If anyone wants to call me a coward because I protected myself while telling the truth, I'd ask them to consider why protection was necessary." My hands trembled. I let them. "But I will not let my work be used to suggest misconduct by a professor who did not reveal my identity, did not exploit my secret, and did not do anything except hold me to a higher standard than anyone else in this room dared to. Dr. Rhee knew because I had a private accident on my first day." A terrible flicker of humor moved through me. "Not that kind of accident. Don't look hopeful." A nervous laugh passed through the crowd. Even Dr. Rhee's mouth moved. Barely. Clara stepped in. "So you admit she knew and kept your secret?" Dr. Rhee spoke then, calm and clear. "Yes." The room turned to her. "I kept a student's pseudonym confidential because it did not violate academic policy, and because forced exposure can be a form of retaliation. Ms. Voss's work in my seminar has been graded under department blind review procedures since September." She looked at the dean. "A precaution I documented after I became aware of her authorship." I stared at her. She had recused herself quietly months ago from final grading authority. Of course she had. Boundaries, not indifference. Dr. Rhee continued, "If the board wishes to discuss anonymous critique, we can begin with the anonymous donor complaints currently influencing curriculum review. I brought copies." That was when I understood why people feared her. Not because she was cruel, because she arrived prepared to make hypocrisy expensive. The dean made a sound like a man stepping on glass. Trustees shifted. Students began whispering, not with pity now, but with hungry astonishment. Clara looked around and found no easy audience. Nina stepped away from her. It was small, one pace, but I saw it. Clara saw it too. "Emery is manipulating this," Clara said, voice cracking at the edges. "She always does this. She makes herself the victim and everyone runs to rescue her." I turned to her. The room disappeared enough that I could speak softly and still be heard. "You cheated. You lied. You let me be humiliated because it made your story cleaner. You slapped me and called it provoked. Tonight you tried to expose me because you thought my fear belonged to you. It doesn't." Her eyes filled, not with remorse but rage. "You think this makes you better than me?" "No," I said. "It makes me free of needing you to understand why you hurt me." That was the end of Clara's power over me. Not because she vanished from my life that night. People like Clara remain in hallways, emails, mutual memories. But something inside me stopped facing her direction. The aftermath was loud for everyone except me. The student paper published my statement. The board announced a review so carefully worded it squeaked. My fellowship remained intact because public retaliation had become less convenient than tolerance. Moth was no longer a secret. My mother called me crying after finding out online, furious that I had been afraid alone and proud, in a voice that made both of us quiet. Nina left Clara 2 weeks later. She did not ask to come back to me. That was her first respectful choice in months. Dr. Rhee was investigated technically. It lasted 9 days. Her documentation was immaculate. Her enemies were numerous but poorly organized. At the end of term, she called me to her office after final grades were submitted and filed. I stood in the doorway with my coat on, suddenly terrified. Snow pressed against the window in soft gray light. Her office looked the same. Books, rug, kettle, no photographs. But everything felt altered because the structure between us had changed. My grade was final. The semester was over. She was no longer my instructor. She had also announced a spring research leave that morning, which meant she would not supervise any of my work. Dr. Rhee stood by the desk. "Come in, Emery." My first name. No warning this time. I entered and closed the door. "Is this appropriate?" "No." My breath caught. She met my eyes. "It is honest. I am deciding to value that more." The room narrowed to her face. The snow. The space between us that had been measured for months in rules. "Are you leaving because of me?" "I am taking leave because the department needs distance from gossip and because I have a book due." A pause. "I chose the timing because of you." I looked down. "That sounds like leaving." "It is a boundary, not abandonment." I laughed softly, painfully. "You and your boundaries. They are the only reason I can stand here and say this without shame." She stepped closer, stopping a few feet away. "I have feelings for you. They began at an inconvenient time, which does not make them less real. I have done everything I know to keep them from costing you your freedom. If you do not want this, say so, and I will leave your life with as much grace as I can gather." I had imagined a confession from her as something elegant, devastating, perhaps phrased like literary criticism. Instead, she looked pale and steady and afraid, in a way that honored me more than confidence would have. "You really think I don't want this?" I whispered. "I think wanting is not the same as being ready. I'm tired of people deciding what my feelings mean before I speak." Her face softened. "Then speak." I took a breath. "I have feelings for you. They are inconvenient too. They grew out of soup and arguments, and you refusing to lie when lying would have been easier. They grew because you saw me when I was humiliated and did not make a home out of my weakness. They grew because you protected me from everyone, including yourself." Her eyes shone, just slightly. Snow moved beyond the glass like torn paper. "But I don't want to be your secret," I said. "I don't want to step from one hidden life into another." "You won't." "I don't want gratitude mistaken for love." "Then we go slowly enough to learn the difference." "I don't want to be managed." At that, a faint smile touched her mouth. "I have noticed." I stepped closer. "And I want to kiss you on purpose." The stillness that passed through her was nothing like cold. It was restraint hearing its own release. "Emery, this time I'm aiming." She laughed. Quietly, incredulously, a sound I felt more than heard. Then she lifted her hand, stopped before touching me and asked, "May I?" I nodded. Her fingers touched my cheek where Clara's slap had once marked me. The tenderness of it nearly broke me. She leaned in slowly, giving me time, giving herself time, giving the months between us their due. Our kiss was nothing like the first one. There was no panic, no falling books, no taste of tears and rain. It was careful at first, almost questioning, then deep with all the things we had refused to steal from the wrong moment. I held the edge of her sweater. She cupped my face as if my wanting were something precious and not embarrassing. When we parted, I was crying. She wiped the tears with her thumb. "I still have your book," I said, "because emotion makes cowards of us in strange ways." "I know. You never asked for it back. I hoped you would need to return it." Manipulative. Strategic. "Professor." "Not anymore," she said, and the words moved through me like warmth. We did go slowly, not because passion was absent, but because care required its own pace. We had coffee far from campus, walked through museums, argued about captions, and traded the ordinary histories that had made us difficult. By spring, my life had not become easy. Healing did not turn the world into silk. Clara remained in the program, though quieter after Nina left. Sometimes I saw her across campus and felt the old bruise speak. Nina and I were not friends again. But one afternoon, she sent me a letter on real paper, apologizing without asking for absolution. I kept it in a drawer. Moth became my name instead of my hiding place. The university was still polished and defensive, but I was no longer whispering from inside its walls. Seraphine returned from leave to a different role, and I arranged my committee without her. We were careful, public in the ways that mattered, and private in the ways that belonged to us. People talked. People always talk when two women refuse to make their lives convenient for rumor. The first time we attended a reception together, after everything was allowed, I wore the black dress again, properly tailored because Seraphine insisted $12 deserved structural respect. She wore navy, which for her was practically a carnival. Clara saw us enter, jealous and disbelieving. Once that look would have fed the injured part of me. That night, it passed through and found nowhere to stay. Afterward, we walked under early summer trees. Alder Hall glowed ahead of us. I stopped. That's where I thought my life ended. In the lobby? Seraphine asked. With Clara, Nina, everyone watching. I touched the blue scarf at my wrist. I thought humiliation was a verdict. And now? I looked toward the corridor where I had fallen into her life. Now I think sometimes the worst moment is only the doorway. It still hurts, but it isn't the whole house. Her hand found mine. Do you regret it? She asked. The kiss? The pain before it. I thought about lying because romance likes clean answers. Yes, I said. Sometimes. I regret trusting people who used my trust against me. I regret trying so long to be easy to love. But the rest brought me here. She kissed me beneath the trees. Not hidden, not performed, just ours. Later, at my apartment, the black notebook lay beside white tulips. I opened to a blank page and wrote one sentence. I was not rescued from my life. I was witnessed until I could choose it again. Seraphine read over my shoulder. Strong verb, she said. Former professor approved? Former professor, she corrected. And yes. I turned in my chair. Outside, the city moved on with all its indifferent light. Inside, nothing needed proving. Clara's voice was gone from the room. Nina's absence no longer sat like an accusation. The first accidental kiss, the secret, the scandal, all of it had become mine to tell without shrinking. Seraphine touched the scarf at my wrist. You still wear it. I took it back. Then I changed what it meant. Her eyes warmed. That is a difficult art. I had a severe teacher. Did she pass you? I pretended to consider. With revisions. She laughed, and I kissed her before the sound disappeared. It was not accidental. It was not secret. It was not a fall. It was a choice made in lamplight, with my notebook closed and my name finally belonging to me, and I understood that forgetting my ex had never been the victory. The victory was remembering myself so completely that love no longer felt like evidence I had survived someone else. It felt like the life waiting afterward, steady and warm, asking nothing from me except that I arrive as I was.